I mean, it looks a little crude, admittingly, but there is something undeniably interesting about it. And Faith and John Hubley would go on to win a few more Oscars in this category and continue to pioneer their own unique style of animation, and we will talk about that later in this video since, well, obviously they won again. Now, the first short to win in the 60s was a Czechoslovakia-American animated film directed by Gene Deitch called Monroe, which means this is actually the first short to be composed outside of the United States to be honored with an award. And so this is about a 4-year-old boy who gets drafted to the U.S. Army. And yeah, it's as funny as it sounds. I mean, okay, so this was like the beginning of the 60s. Obviously, the draft was very much on people's minds, and so as you can see, that's one reason why this short won the award. But it's also just so funny and absurd that this little kid, who's basically a brat, gets what he deserves. He goes to the army and basically keeps trying to tell everyone he's 4 years old, and no one really bothers to really take a look at him. It's absurdity in its finest, and the conclusion is just such a well duh moment that you can't help but find the whole thing absolutely hysterical. So this one is not easily available, I am sorry to say. However, it is on their official YouTube channel, so this might be one of the easier ones to at least view. Ersatz, otherwise known as Surrogate. So this is a bizarre one. It's about this guy who goes to the beach and can inflate and deflate everything around him, and he's trying to get the attention of this girl, but there's another guy who wants the girl. It's actually kind of funny how inappropriate some of the humor is, considering this is 1962. So this is an example of a short that it's hard to really look at it and think about it, because it's like, it's too goofy to be taken seriously, and it's too bizarre to make any lick of sense, really, but it's also really clever and really cute, and it just has a unique style. It's like, this is what the animated short Oscar really seemed to be made for, to reward people who are thinking outside the box visually and story-wise, like this one. Now, unfortunately, finding this one might be a little difficult. It is on the Internet Archive as of this recording, and the Academy has preserved the short, but due to the weird nature of, a company not making it and it being independent, this one's kind of hard to find, but definitely worth checking out. So far, it's just one of the most unique things I've seen from this award. All right, our next film is The Hole, and John Hubley and Faith Hubley return to direct, and this time Faith is properly credited, and they would be co-credited going forward and working as a duo. Now, kind of like the last short film that they made, this one is not exactly written. In fact, they don't even call it a short, they call it an observation at the beginning of the film, because the movie uses improvised dialogue from Dizzy Gillespie and George Matthews. Dizzy was a jazz trumpeter, bandland leader, composer, educator, and singer, and George Matthews was an American actor. And basically, they improvise this conversation as two construction workers working at the bottom of a hole about the possibility of nuclear weapons attacks, whether or not there is such a thing as an accident, who's going to get what of the life insurance when one of them dies. And it is hilarious. It is really, really funny. They got some very talented people to improvise this. The animation is unique, and it's kind of fun about this is, I don't know any of you who watched the Ricky Gervais show, but this is the short that kind of pioneered that format where comedians would talk about things, share stories, and then animators can animate and visualize those discussions. And so I really like The Hole. Now, like a couple other shorts, this one's not as easily available, but as of this recording, it is on the Internet Archive, and this one actually is preserved by the United States National Film Registry, so thankfully we should never completely lose it. All right, moving on, we have The Critic, and I'm going to tell you guys right now, this is one of the funniest shorts to win an Oscar. One of the funniest. I'm not even going to do any video editing because the visuals don't really matter. The whole concept is that you're seeing these weird images, kind of like you're looking at now, but instead of hearing me talk about this movie, you hear Mel Brooks as like a 71-year-old Jewish guy commenting on the images and how they're garbage, and that, you know, maybe the person making this movie, he could be doing something useful with his time, like making a shoe or driving a truck. It is absolutely hilarious. There's a reason Mel Brooks was, and still is, because he's still alive as a recording, a comedic treasure. So if anyone wants a good laugh, and it's not very long, this one's really one of the shorter ones. It's less than 4 minutes. But if you want a lot of laughs in 4 minutes, definitely seek out The Critic. Now here's something you might have actually seen before, the Pink Think. Now this is the very first Pink Panther short. Now for those of you who are unaware of the history of the Pink Panther series, it was a comedy series written and directed by Blake Edwards, starring Inspector Clouseau, and the actor who portrayed him was Peter Sellers. Now, the movies were basically heist films. Inspector Clouseau is trying to catch thieves and things like that. Most of them are really funny, and I highly recommend you seek them out. But each movie had an opening and ending cartoon, and those cartoons were so well received, they decided to take the Pink Panther and make him his own star. And this short is, well, the first Pink Panther short, and I can understand why it won. The Pink Panther is a likable character. The comedy is gold. The storyline, well, it's simple. I mean, basically the Pink Panther is trying to paint things pink, while the painter is trying to paint things blue, and they kind of play that joke over and over again. But again, the comedic timing is just so great, and even though the colors are limited, colors are used very wisely and very effectively in this short, and I could see why this short spun off a whole series of other Pink Panther shorts, some of which were even better than this one. But this was definitely a great beginning to a career, and the Pink Panther has been seen in a variety of different shorts and movies since then. Now, for those of you who are thinking that the abstract shorts that were experimental in nature were limited to just independent studios, I present to you The Dot and the Line, a romance in lower mathematics. This is a Chuck Jones short, and it involves a line who falls in love with a dot, but the dot doesn't like the line because the line is too... But the dot doesn't like the line because the line is a bit too much of a straight arrow for her liking, and so the line ends up transforming himself and being artistic and, you know, free and unpredictable. And, you know, you watch this and it's like, is this Chuck Jones basically making an animation lecture for new students? Because it kind of feels like that's what it is, but it also tells a little charming story. And even though there's no actual faces on either the dot or the line, you get the sense of their personality beaming from this thing regardless. So yeah, this shows that even the established animators didn't mind dipping into the abstract once in a while to make their animation. Next short on the list is a Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass double feature. Now this was directed by John and Faith Hubley again. This is their third win in this category, and this is probably their most straightforward and least experimental film of the bunch, although in a way it was still experimental. It's an animated short featuring 2 songs from Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass album Going Places, which is an excellent album if you haven't listened to it, by the way. And it puts images to 2 of the soundtracks with 2 separate cartoons, Spanish Flea and Tijuana Taxi, hence why it is called a Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass double feature. There are 2 cartoons in one, although the short is still only about 5 or 6 minutes long. And this actually was kind of considered a prototype to what would eventually become as the music video. And as such, that makes it a little experimental, but because other people started doing it, it kind of doesn't feel radical. It feels very traditional in a way. Now, interestingly, even though this short was distributed by Paramount Pictures, it is unfortunately not available on home video. It's never been released on home video. However, it is preserved at the Academy Film Archive and has been so since 2003, so thank you for film preservation. All right, next up we have The Box, and no, this is not based off that terrible Cameron Diaz movie from 2009. This is a comedic little short in which a sailor has a box and multiple people want to know what's in it, and they all have different reactions to what's in the box. And it might not sound like much, but it is enjoyable, and the ending is definitely unexpected. All right, as much as I may have complained a little bit about how Walt Disney may be overwon in the best animated short category, the truth of the matter is his contributions are still very much important. Many of his films are classics, and so it made sense for him to win a lot of awards, but he would win one more for Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day. This was actually a posthumous win, and it would be Walt Disney's final Academy Award. Chances are many of you have seen this one. It's part of the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, and of course it was a bestseller on VHS back in the day. And, well, Winnie the Pooh and friends are dealing with a windy day and then eventually a storm. So I think this was also the first appearance of Tigger. So, yeah, if Disney was going to win one more Academy Award, this is definitely a good one to win it on. It is the quintessential Winnie the Pooh short. And I think this is the one that even made Winnie the Pooh truly a household name when it came to animation. The first one, Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, definitely did good, but Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day excelled in every way that that original short didn't. And it makes sense that this would be Walt Disney's final Academy Award. The death of Walt Disney was clearly going to have a huge effect on the animation and movie industry in general. And in a category where Walt had won 32 Oscars, it seemed like this was the end of an era, but it wasn't exactly the end of an era for the Walt Disney Studio, because 1 year after Disney won his final Academy Award for Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, It's Tough to Be a Bird by Nine Old Men alum Ward Kimball won the Academy Award, and this would actually be the final award that the Walt Disney Studio would win until much, much later on down the road. Now, how was the short itself? Well, it's an entertaining documentary with an animated bird basically explaining how birds have contributed to human culture, even as people try to kill them. He talks about flight, the endangered species. It's honestly more of a documentary, and I'm a little surprised it wasn't nominated in the Best Documentary Short category. And before anyone says, well, it can't be in that category, there's too much animation for it to be considered a documentary, I want to point out that Donald in Math Magic Land was nominated for Best Documentary Short Subject, and I thought it would have been really cool for something like this to win in that category to kind of broaden the appeal of the category. That being said, there is a poetic justice to this winning the Best Animated Short Film category because Walt had just died and a new generation was starting, a new era, a new decade, really. And so it was kind of nice to see the Disney Company win one more award before the Oscars basically turned their back on Disney animated cartoons in the Best Animated Short Film category, and a new era of animated shorts that would be very interesting and very different from what we had just seen started. Hey, you made it to the end. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Just a few more things. First of all, the names that you see on the screen, these are our Patreon and YouTube member supporters, and I thank each and every one of them. Their support helps me make exclusive videos for Patreon and YouTube members, as well as keep the channel running, and of course is just of huge kindness to me. Also, don't forget to check out the iCritic-led podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, Deezer, whatever podcasting service you listen to. It is there. We definitely want to see you there. And hey, there's also other videos that you can check out. So, you know, check out these other channels, these other videos, especially that one. I think that's a really good one.